Yo, welcome back to the Fifth Year Lifestyle Podcast, conversations on lifestyle, passions and hustles. My name's Chris, I am your host, and I'm super excited to be back here having the conversation with you. Now, today's episode is a special episode. We're not actually in my normal area where I'm recording, I'm in the car, and so audio will be a little rough and tough this time, but a bit of a interesting and exciting way I'm doing the podcast today, because I'm actually meeting up with a really good friend, previous guest, Kevin Exconde, and he's come all the way over from Canada, not just for me, he's here with his sister, but we're going to catch up and we're going to do kind of a go about in the car, drive around podcast while he's here. Just catch up, talk about different things, ask some questions, and he's been on the podcast a couple of times and, you know, talking about his own progress. We did a bit of a fun episode one time where we spoke about what if scenarios, like what would he do in these scenarios, or imagine if he had all the money in the world. And that was a really fun episode actually, but I enjoy having the conversation with Kevin. Kevin's like a best friend to me, and never actually met in person, ironically, but been really good friends since being on YouTube together, and I'm excited to be able to have this conversation with him. So I'm just heading into Melbourne now to pick him up, and we'll be doing a bit more of this kind of style. So if you are here on the YouTube, obviously you'll get more of an experience watching it live on the YouTube with the video format. Otherwise, if you are listening with the audio, that's fine as well, and we'll talk and try and describe anything that we may do or see while we're out and about. All right, let's dive in. All right, here's Kev. Welcome, Kev.
Thank you.
Back to the
pod.
Back to the pod.
In the flesh.
It's been a while. I think I was looking at it before, and I think you were one of my early guests, and this is back in like episode 14, which would have been around probably almost 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That's
20,
crazy. It's
21.
That's insane. Wow. And I think you were like guest number 3 or 4, maybe 5. And then we had you back for like episode 40, and we did that what if scenario situation. You know, like if you were going to Mars, or if you won $1 million or whatever. And well, I figured now that you're here, and as we said, we'll do this kind of test of a podcast
on the road pod.
Except we're not driving, because it's probably going to be too hard to do and think about. So I do apologize, people, if the audio is a bit different today, but suck it up. I'm just telling you how it is. So Kevin, really what I wanted to talk about today was really catch up on you, what's been happening. I know that, I think last time, for anyone that hasn't gone and listened to episode 40, at that stage you're doing a bit of YouTube stuff, and I don't think at that time you had really started to dabble in the business that you're doing now. You were probably in the ideation stage, or just, I think actually you were more focused on just wanting to hit the big time on YouTube. Yeah.
I think I was still just kind of freelancing, like video editing, like producing things like that. And then doing the YouTube stuff. And from there it's kind of completely switched. Now it's like, you know, started a business with my cousin, we just video editing team or agency, whatever you want to call it, and focusing on social media content, and did that almost about a year ago, July. Yeah. So
it's crazy.
Yeah, and then started just picking that up and doing a lot more business related stuff. Yeah. Like, not actually so much, which is scary, because it's more of like, I always used to think I was an editor or a video guy, but now I'm much more than that. I think it's like the focusing of the business on top of the
so you're doing more on the business than in the business now.
Yeah.
And like, just to give people an idea, I obviously know some of this and share what you're comfortable sharing, but basically, in short, you're basically reaching out to people saying, hey, originally it was like, we can create your short form video content, whether it was people doing consulting or coaches or whatever. And from when you started, I mean, you've probably been doing the business just under a year now, as you said, July last year. Yeah. So from that, how have you seen in terms of the scale of growth? And the reason why I want to ask this question is because you've taken a skill that you've always been good at, because you've always done freelancing and stuff like that with video, but you've then applied it with, you know, the experience and skills of, you know, friends and cousins and family that in a similar eco space, right? And now you put it into a business, and you've basically in 12 months gone from 0 to what kind of like dollars are we talking?
Yeah, so like, I think our best month was, we hit 5 figures one month.
That's incredible.
But that was I think that was January, and then after that, it fluctuates, you know.
Yeah, of course.
But that was our best month, and it was like, and the issue too, I think, is because we focus on short form content, it was a very hot thing to focus on. So, you know, with one YouTube shorts coming out, monetizing, things like that, now we've kind of seen it die down. So now the business has taken on like new life, doing other things like we're just trying to focus on the whole YouTube ecosystem as opposed to just shorts, and that's a bit of a challenge as well. So, but yeah, when we started, we focused on one thing, and it was not just shorts, but like repurposing people's content. So going through real estate content and then repackaging those into, we actually narrowed it down, and then we niched down into real estate. But now it's so funny. One of our clients was saying how, and he's one of the top agents in Texas, and he was saying, you guys shouldn't do real estate. And we're like, why? He's like, there's no money in real estate. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, real estate, there's no money. Like, it's literally like the top certain percentage, and they're broke. A lot of real estate agents are broke. I'm like, huh.
But why is that? Is that because they get lots of money in rent, like not consistently, so then they have to spend it, and they're usually getting the fancy stuff at the same
and just
time,
like the amount of competition. So like, you know, he said successful, if you want to think about successful, there's like 12% of real estate agents are actually.
I mean, but I guess that's probably like
a majority
in any industry though, right? Like,
that's
I mean,
what I'm thinking too.
Like, it's probably like an 20-80 rule, like 20% of the ones are the top tiers and 80% of the ones just being the generalized, right? But I mean, it's like in the same ecospace of resellers or flippers or whatever, because there's a lot of people doing it that are doing it part-time, and they're just low key, casual, you know, maybe making a couple of thousand a month in, probably not even that, probably just literally like 2,000 max, because they're doing it as a side. But then, you know, I'm a bit more of an outlier because I'm doing it as a business, in the sense of like I'm trying to grow it for my full-time income but scale it. Therefore, you know, I'm doing a lot bigger numbers, like 5 digits as well. Of course, we're all talking revenue here. This is not all profit. But back to the whole point of, I mean, yeah, that'll make sense with, you know, that I guess that's, what is the right word? Scarcity or spread of people being more, you know, it's not actually a really good field, but I think that's across the board. But then back to your point around going less than 12 months to be able to grow from, and I say this loosely, grow from nothing, because it's not really from nothing. You've got the experience, you've got the understanding, you've got the experience.
It's like the ideation of the business. But
what I liked what you said there was you had to pivot, like you've probably pivoted 3 or 4 times.
And still continue.
Still up.
Still trying to figure it out.
That's really, I think, the important message right there, is because anyone that's listening to this thinking of, you know, whether it's business or a skill or just trying to learn something or goals, hobbies, whatever, you know, you have to go for that experience. And running's another good example for myself, where some years I'm going to have a really good running year where, you know, I'm banging off all these good races, but then you might get an injury one year, so you have to take it back. Like last year I had COVID, you know, I wasn't able to do it. You have to pivot and adjust and still find a way to how do you move forward and still get the somewhat results, or, you know, get that expectation that you're looking for. But it's been good, right? Like, I mean, the journey's been... It's
been good. And like, like 5 figures sounds great, but like, obviously that's not profit. That's not profit. There's also, it's like a team. There's like, well, what is it now? 6 of us, but obviously some are like, just we're paying a little bit here and there. And so it sounds great, and it is great. And there's like so much other things, but
it's a big trade for time. Like, I mean, obviously it's different for me, because I'll spend a bit of time to purchase stock to then sell that stock, which comes a bit more passive in that sense. Obviously then I have to go post and all that, whereas for you, you're literally trading time for money, in the sense of like, if you got a client and you got to get out, you know, 4 hours worth of editing, it's 4 hours worth of editing, unless you're paying someone else to do the 4 hours of editing, right? But so I guess there's different margins and understanding of, you know, because you don't really hold much asset. It's all just people, people and knowledge,
energy, really. You know what I mean? And before, what we were doing is we were hiring a lot of people, like outside, right? But we've actually, now the business model has changed, where we're starting to find a lot of the big money is actually not doing that, and like people kind of actually just want their own team. Like, I want you, Kev, to be editing or helping me with the ideation, as opposed to like, I don't really know who's editing this, right?
Yeah, that's a fair point. Like recently, I, like literally in the last 48 hours before this recording this, I put up a post on my Instagram that I've got the idea of wanting to get a VA, a virtual assistant, to help with social stuff, because I've been really slack with the socials on the podcast. But you know, people have said, oh, well, why don't you just, you know, double down on tools and allocate time for it and stuff. And it's like, yeah, but at the end of the day, like, I'm not motivated to do it. And if I can pay someone half that it would cost me to do for my time, but they're going to do it better, then why not? But what I'm also trying to look for is someone that I can build that relationship of longevity. And because, you know, I'd rather bring someone that I know they're going to do it for me. They're my girl or guy or whatever. And we can grow together over the next, you know, however many years, because I like that personable experience. And I know that, you know, it's like, if, you know, I were getting you doing stuff and it's like, oh yeah, my boy Kev can do that or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
It's worth it to have that relationship. I think that's where also the money is, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, because then I'll be more like, it's like keeping you on retainer or whatever, right? Or it's like the whole premise of like, you know, people have their accountant or they have their lawyer or they have their guy or the fixer, you know, like
yeah.
So it makes sense, but okay. And so, you know, it's still early days, like, and I'm not here for you to reveal all your big bold plans, but I'm sure you've got big bold plans.
yeah, I think it's kind of doing the same where before it was like a quantity, like how much people can we get, you know, let's just say to pay like $1,000 a month, right?
Yeah.
So we're trying to do like, we were trying to do it like as many, and then hiring editors, and then obviously taking a percentage. But now I think what we're focusing on is higher ticket and less clients. So we really only want to take on ideally only 5 at a much higher rate.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
and
then building like, that relationship.
If originally it was $1,000 a month, if you're trying to take less, well, what kind of?
Yeah. So, and this is where everything is like, what's the value, the niche as well. Right now, it's like, what is the value of it? So we're trying to do the whole YouTube ecosystem. So including things like podcasts, because that's a big thing, and then repurposing that into short form content, and then taking the older content, repurposing that into video ideas, maybe for long videos, or maybe video ideas for the podcast.
It's
like
a full suite. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so we're trying to do the whole YouTube ecosystem, and for like more of business coaches and consultants.
Yeah, it's actually, now that I think about it, the layering of that's quite intense, because how do you create a consistent package that you can kind of go out to anyone and say, hey, look, you're going to be paying us $5,000 a month and this is what you're getting. But not everyone's going to be doing all those things.
Exactly.
Not everyone's going to know about all those things. Or some people are like, oh no, I want it just done this way and I want you to edit, and they don't want you doing the strategy and stuff. But would it almost be like you're becoming the whole outsource team of that channel, and with the caveat that they've got their goals in mind? How do they bring you in to kind of run and manage things, strategize and roadmap it? Is that probably more
that's more like the jive, right? What we're trying to do, and especially because like we're starting to find that one, and you know, because you're doing a lot of podcasts, you listen to a lot of it, like the growth of that is huge. It's going to be huge in the next 5 to 10 years. So I think now it's more of creators are going to start to figure out, oh, I need almost every type of format, and there's a place for it within my business. Like their shorts is more of a, it's not a depth thing, it's a width thing. Like get in front of more eyes. The longer form, those convert much better, and then even on top of that, podcasts, those are like your true fans, so that conversion is a lot better. So it's just figuring that out, and then retaining it. You know, what can we do with your old content? Like, are there still like active points in some of the stuff that you did 5 years ago that we can like, so one thing that we offer is like, we'll comb through YouTube videos that are like 5+ years or like older videos, and then get the best points, and then type it out, send it to them, and then when they shoot their next video, they actually shoot like that little short, but it's original content. So what we do is we call it like repurpose for original. So we go through like all their old stuff, repurpose it, and then they shoot it for original because that performs a lot better. So, and then on top of that, it's like, hey, maybe some of these points you could just use in your next long form video. Maybe we chat GPT it because we're paying for it, you know, and give it to them. Or it's like, hey, you have an episode of a podcast that's coming up. Maybe some of these are the points that you want to talk about. Or whatever.
Okay. So it's really, someone's got to be, it's almost like a huge investment campaign for whoever that individual is, because it might actually be, it's not about you paying or pay us $5,000 a month. It's kind of like, this is the package, and it might actually be going onto a contract for a full year or something. And you know, kind of,
we're starting to push it. We're starting to see that because our contracts are about 3 months, but we're starting to see that the turnaround is so fast for 3 months, like it just goes by.
Yeah.
And a lot of our clients, like it depends if they have a big audience already, but 3 months is like nothing. Like you almost need like a right? six. I mean, we're starting to push like 6 months,
because 90 days is really when you start to get like a good baseline of data. Like,
exactly.
I mean, like 30 days is when it's you know, a sense of it, but you know, a quarter is when it's really talking, because then you get the fluctuations of different months and seasons and styles or whatever.
Yeah, and that first 3 months is like a trial, what people almost use it as.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Okay. Wow. That's actually quite intense. But I love it. Like, you know, it's just the reason why I wanted to bring it up is because, well, one, you've been part of the pod a few times, and we've talked about so many different things, and I know we speak like every month about this kind of stuff. So I think it's just a good way to help other people realize that, you know, we've got so much capability, and you have to go out there and figure out how to make that work. And I'm not saying it's easy, but it's easy enough to know that you can just go out and do it, right? Like, you just got to start from somewhere, right? It's action, right? As much as people don't want to hear it, that's the reality of it. You can't get anything unless you're doing the work. Okay, all right. I mean, yeah, I mean, I could probably ask so many questions about it.
Yeah, dude. Hey,
but it's like, but you know,
I'm down.
But at the same time, like, I'm trying to keep it at surface level of them, and the amount that, like, you know, helping people to be inspired and encouraged and things like that. So maybe the better question is to ask is, like, over the last, you know, lots happened obviously the last 3 years, and you've evolved from those conversations that we've had previously. But if you think about, with everything that you've been doing in the last 1 year, because this is probably something that's more that you're going to focus on for the longer term, you know, building out, you know, business, company, whatever, is there things that you wish you had known so much earlier? Because I mean, a lot of it you would know because you've done a lot of freelancing. Yeah. But now that you can appreciate going through this, because there'll be things that you're probably recalling from, like, you know, over the last 5-10 years, they're like, oh, this makes sense. But even the stuff that you're doing now, you're thinking, oh, imagine if we were doing this kind of operation 10 years ago. But it might not even be about that whole circumstance, like just stuff that you wish you had known earlier, I guess.
I think the whole, with building out a business, it's like really about the systems.
Yep.
The systems are crazy. When you start getting, and like the foundation of a system, regardless if it's like workflow or if it's for people, just doing that, it saves so much time. Yeah, and like there's so much, like, cold email, like our cold email system, like they're just with our VAs, we have a system. Editing processes, how we get it to clients, there's like a system. So it's always about building a system, one, figuring out how it works and if it does work, and then when it's successful, it's like, okay, just keep doing that, putting it into place. And then I guess other than that, it's just like, if you can find someone to do something that you don't want to do, or that could do it better, you need to hire them.
I'm realizing that more and more now. That's why I'm like, with the whole social media thing, it's like, I mean, I could use ChatGPT, I could use all these different tools, and there's lots of tools, and you can pay for those tools and they probably do it, but I'm still having to do levels of the work. What I would rather do is set the scene, set the expectation, and then have someone come in and be proactive and take my vision and make it even sexier, right? And they get paid for it, and we make money together, right? Whatever. But back to you. So with you talking about systems and processes and stuff, that's what you wish you knew earlier. So to keep you honest, do you apply outside of business world systems and all those kind of things to your everyday life?
I've always been structured in some way, but it's never as rigid as the business life. The business life is very much like things need
intense,
to and I just don't know how I would function as a person if I was that rigid about it in my personal life. But certain things, like, you know, working out and, like, you know, meals, eating, fasting, like, there's all sleep times or whatever. Is all, but, you know, I can tighten things up, but I also feel like I need to live my life a little bit.
You know, no, it's you know, it's one of those interesting questions, because, you know, when we look ahead of people and where they're at, and they talk about, you know, build a routine, or you know, it's that whole cliche of, like, you know, the CEO who's up at 4 a.m. doing this, and you know there's a lot of those funny TikToks. It's like, you know, I'm up at 5 and I have my latte, and then I meditate for 30 minutes. And go for a run, and by 9 o'clock I read a book, and it's like everyone's thinking, what the hell does this guy do? He doesn't do any work, right? And it's funny in that sense because yes, you have to have routines. Like I have a routine and I follow it by the book, but at the same time I'm very flexible and I can change it at any time. But there's those core non-negotiables that enable me to be able to thrive in other parts. Do you think you have non-negotiables that are enabling you to thrive?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's the it's probably just like the working out part. Yeah, is like the thing is like I always need to at least get out. If I miss like 2 days in a row, I feel like, okay, today I gotta go out and at least do something. And it's not like I'm like a fitness person, but it's like the act of movement. That's always been a hard thing for me. So I'm getting better at that, and that's a non-negotiable. It's like, okay, after a couple of days, it's like, okay, I can't. You got to do something, Kevin, regardless of how much work you have. I wish though I was a little bit more rigid with like my sleeping, because I feel like there's some days I'm sleeping at like 4 in the morning to finish work.
Jeebus.
And that's actually been the average of the last 2 months.
That's
by
insane.
Like 4 in the morning, and then I'm waking up at
it's
like.
It's the reality of it, like.
If
you want something, you got to grind it.
And like it's about finding. It's about actually. It's weird because that's a system in itself. Yeah. Because like from midnight to 4 a.m. is when I'm the most productive in terms of editing.
Okay.
Like so, it's like
making me sleepy just thinking about it. What the heck?
Yeah. So it's like that's a system in itself. But I really wish like, you know, I can get back on track and not be like that. But it's just been working, and it's like, I don't know. It's kind of ingrained.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess that's it. Not only non-negotiable, like health-wise. I should be doing a little bit more though, in like in that terms.
With the ratio of food intake.
Yeah, the amount of food, or at least like maybe not eat out so much and stuff like that. But yeah,
can't have it all, I guess. You know.
Yeah, you know, just as long as I'm healthy and I'm active, moving.
And so with all this, because obviously you're creating a lot of content for people or helping them create content, and you're trying to move forward with the business and stuff. So being a creator yourself, you know, you do have your own YouTube and things like that. Where do you find your inspo from, or what gives you the inspiration? Because there's 2 levels to this, because there's the day-to-day inspo and motivation, right? So where's the inspiration coming from to stay motivated for your, you know, end games, versus how do you stay fresh for inspiration for other people, right? Because you're always putting out creativity, whether it's in your own life with your own stuff, or you're always having to put it on for someone else's life.
Oh,
it's a mental load.
It is, and I think it's because of the niches that I'm in, because we were doing real estate for, I don't know, 4 or 5 months. Yeah, it was interesting for me to get into that. It was like a whole new type of creativity. Like, what can I do?
So it's exciting to learn. Yeah,
learn about that specific, you know, industry. And I think that always will breed creativity regardless, because it's like, oh, what I do is like, I always try to think about like, okay, if I'm doing real estate stuff, what is a real estate person, like an audience, a viewer, like what do they want to see? Yeah. Because it's completely different from like food or something like running, right? When you are looking for houses, sometimes it is a visual effect of like a house, or like rooms and like, you know, slow moving pans and stuff like that. Yeah, you know what I mean? Because that's what they want to see. So learning about that is what kind of keeps me going, like new industries.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
And also I'm the type to get bored. Like after I shoot my own stuff, it's like boring because I'm never really trying new things. Yep. But it's like, at least with some clients, especially the ones that we want to take on, who are more of a creator, business creator. Yeah. They're open to like, you know, hey, can we try this, or like, can I edit it like this? And they're like, oh, that's cool. Like, I never thought of that. But meanwhile, I've been doing it on my own stuff for years. It's just like, you know, it's boring on my end. But when they see it, and they're like, whoa, this is cool. And I'm like, yeah, like I've at least tried it on my own stuff. Yeah, there's like the motivations behind it. And like everything, films, I've been really into filmmakers on YouTube, actually. So watching a lot of like short films, like to get inspiration from, just in terms of shooting and like editing. Yeah, pretty much it.
Yeah, I mean, it makes. I mean, there's no right or wrong answer to it, right? I mean, it's always curious because I know for myself, you know, I'm always on. Like if I'm not on in the business, I'm then working on the podcast. If I'm not doing that, you know, even out thrifting, you know, we were just chatting before how like thinking about content, but also just trying to be in the moment of actually looking for items to sell, and then you're just always on, and you know, to be able to keep everything fresh. And you know, then you've got your life, then you've got routines, and you've got, you know, things that pop into life, and it's a big juggling game.
It is.
You know, like even if I was to ask myself the same question, where do I get my inspo from? It's like, you know, I don't find myself from a year ago, even to 2 years ago, like I was watching a lot more different stuff that was probably inspiring me, motivating me, or giving me fresh ideas. Whereas now it's kind of like, you know, it's just the everyday conversations with peers and everyday conversations with people that I'm looking up to, that you know, maybe see as a baseline of where I could be, for instance. But I think for me it's just the constant drive of seeing progress, and probably the only way to make it more clearer for anyone that isn't doing business is like when you run or when you work out, you know, usually on a regular basis, whether it's weekly or monthly, you can see a bit of a uplift or uptick of like progress. Like, you know, you might be more buff, or you've lost a bit of weight, or you can run a bit faster, or you can, you know, your stamina's increased or endurance. And so you're like, oh, I'm gonna go. But then the next time you might go out and you have a bad run, and you're like, oh, well, that was crap, like what's going on? And but then you go the next time, it's like, oh, it's not too bad. So it's like this, you know, constant roller coaster. But because you're seeing more small wins, or you're able to see, oh, this is progress, and because just because something doesn't go as planned and it might not work in your favor doesn't mean it's not progress. Because, you know, you going through a bad day and having a bad run or a bad experience or a client or whatever, well, that's progress, because now you know how to deal with it the next time it happens.
Yeah.
Right? And yeah, it's just, anyway, it's a deep and interesting.
Yeah, it is. I think, and we always talk about like the waves and motivations, and then I think when you step back and you see it, it's like you just have to have more wins than losses.
Yeah.
What it feels like, you know what I mean? And it's like, and even the losses, you almost have to know what the losses are, because sometimes what people think is a loss is like,
well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you're saying. It's like, and then like, how do you know that? Because for us, we're always like that too. I guarantee some of the losses that I felt last week, in the bigger picture, they're not, right?
You move on, like, and it's like, it's not all that bad. In the moment, it's bad.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this?
Feels like the whole world is coming down.
But then, you know, tomorrow's a new day, it's a new problem, or you know, for me, it's a different, might get more sales or whatever, and you're like, who cares? It was a bad day, right?
Yeah.
But in the moment, it's like, how do you get through it? And I mean, but there's no simple way to capture that, right? I mean, like for me, like I can track a lot of data from a sales perspective, but yours isn't necessarily about that. You know, yours is.
It's weird because like some of the data, for example, because I know you love, you know, numbers. It's like we track like how many cold emails come out, how many calls we get, and then how many conversions we get.
Yeah,
right?
Which makes sense.
Yeah, you know,
it's a different sales metric.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna pause here because I can see my GoPro's about to die.
Yeah.
And we'll be back shortly. Yeah. All right, we're back, team. We've just been here for the last 30 seconds debating. It's like, oh, how do we come back into this? Because I've never done it before, right? I've never actually. It's one thing that I would love to do in the future is be able to actually do podcasts like I know we're doing that now on the fly, but you know, whether it's in person with more people, on the fly, probably not as rigid as this, but essentially, I think it's an exciting experience. But you also get ambient noise and people around you and things like that. So it's a bit weird. It's a whole different
new experience.
It's a whole new experience, and it's different from vlogging though, because like I'm trying to make sure that you guys are hearing things in a way that you want to hear it, whereas on a vlog, you know, it's more visual and you're watching. But most of the time, you know, if you listen to a podcast, you're walking around or whatever. Like this person's about to bring in his wheelie bin, so it's going to get noisy. Anyway, on the fly. No, so I mean, look, we had a good conversation, Kev. But I think the only other thing I was probably gonna ask you was, one, being here in Australia. What's your thoughts?
I enjoy it. I think it's because where I'm from Toronto, so it feels, especially Melbourne. I haven't been anywhere else, but it feels like home a little bit. You know, it's very multicultural. The people are very, very nice.
Of course we are.
Yeah. I was surprised. No. Surprised at how nice, because like I just feel like I've been to other countries, I've been to other cities, and it's always kind of a like, all right, what do you want, kind of vibe.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Here it's like, I went for
good.
coffee this morning. As soon as I was talking, the guy's like, where are you from? And it instantly was just talking to me.
Oh, wow.
And he was like, oh, I lived in Vancouver for a bit. I was like, oh, that's cool.
That's the coffee culture here in Melbourne.
Yeah.
But you were saying that like home is very much the same as here.
Yeah.
Like,
well, like in terms of the look and feel,
Yeah.
the busyness of it, the streets, even just the way the city looks, the certain buildings and things like that.
and they've also got,
and
you got
people.
trams, and you got trams.
And yeah.
And apparently, I didn't know this, but you know, I don't know a lot of things. But apparently, I didn't know Canada's under the Commonwealth.
Mm-hmm.
Like that blows my mind. Like,
Yeah.
for some reason, I just assumed it's the same as America. But
No, we're like the total opposite of America.
and it's funny because you're just like kind of there all by yourself. Like,
Yeah, America's hat is what
Yeah.
that's what people
Yeah.
call it. I actually like to say,
very sad.
yeah.
Yeah, it's yeah. No, but, oh wow, I'm glad you've enjoyed your experience, and I'll have to come to Canada sometime.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely got to visit Toronto.
we had this.
Bet. Oh,
Well-
technically I won.
Yeah, technically did. No, technically you didn't.
Technically I did.
Because
technically I
the
did.
bet, it wasn't a bet, it was a challenge of who could actually come over to see each other first, but our own business had to pay for it. He's writing off his sister's business.
Yeah, well, technically I'm still paying for it. Like,
Is the business paying for it? Is it a business trip?
not really, because I'm still paying for it.
Yeah, well, I don't know. What do you reckon, Tim?
We got a driver though. That's the
I've been
cool
driving around all day, man. Like,
yeah. He even had my name. Technically, you're right. So we did say that the business, our own personal businesses had to pay for the trip.
Yeah, that was, you know, because we've hit the big time. Then that's the idea.
Yeah.
And we'll get there, man. We'll get there. But it was
True.
funny because we had that conversation like, I think it was like before we caught up, and then you said, oh, by the way, actually, I might be coming over sooner than I thought.
Yeah.
So like, we made like the bet not the bet, it was like a challenge last year. And then it was kind of like we caught up earlier this year, and you're like, oh, dude, actually,
I might actually come.
Yeah, you might actually come. And then, you know, he said it's, you know, April, and here we are. So like, oh, I'm super grateful for you coming over, man.
Yeah.
Just to be on the pod, you know. Like,
That's it. Just flying in to be on the pod a little bit.
Flew in Kev from Canada for the podcast. No.
Perfect.
Yeah. Anyway, a lot of banter. It's a bit more of a casual episode today. But
Yeah, I like how you let them know at the very end.
yeah. But no, I said that at the start. I said it was going to be a bit different. But you know, like, it's funny because every time I do an episode with you, if you haven't watched, I think it was episode, what did I say? It was 14 and 40, wasn't it?
Yeah, something like that.
Anyway, I put the links in the description. Both those episodes are very casual, very chilled, and I mean, Kevin's a good friend, so that's why I'm probably a bit more lighthearted. And I'm not as serious. I'm telling you how to further your lifestyle, but I will put you on the spot. You don't know this is coming. How do you think, or what's an encouragement, and it might be from your own, you know, examples or what you're doing, how we can go about furthering our lifestyles?
Ooh, you really put you on the spot, huh?
Deep.
I don't know. I think living in failure for a little bit.
Yeah, okay.
That one's good.
It's tough.
Yeah, because it is tough. Because no one wants to like live in it. When I say live in it, it's like understand like, okay, I actually failed. Because sometimes people just try to move on, or like they try to power through it.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you're like, you actually are in the pits of it, and you're like,
Do you have an example?
just like me. Okay, so there's like a stretch where I was doing sales calls for the business.
Yeah.
And my conversion rate was like, it was like so high. It was like 80%. Like I was just killing it. And then the last 3 months, been super brutal. It's been like,
But is that you though?
I think it's a mix, you know, because I feel like if you're a good salesperson, like you can really, it's a mix of that, the mix of the market, the mix of just how things are going, the changes that we're doing.
Yeah, okay.
But still, it's like, and you know, it's super hard on myself because I'm the one that's bringing in.
And when in your potential, well, I mean, you're not the boss, but like you're trying to lead the others,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. You know, well, because I'm the only sales. Well, like I'm the only salesperson.
That's a problem then, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So-
there is only 3 of us that are running it, so it's like
so how have you navigated through that then?
I'm still in the
Yeah,
pits of
okay,
it. This is
okay.
where we're at right now, and I think it was like, and meanwhile I'm on a trip, not doing work.
That's good.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
But that's what I mean by living in it. Yeah, and I think
you're gonna go back and they won't let you back in. No.
Yeah, they're like, hey man, you're fired. No, but I think that's what it is. It's like just understanding like you're gonna suck. I was on such a high at the beginning of the year, closing people out, and then now it's like, okay, it's it could be me, it could be like the market, and just kind of understanding it and moving, and then you find ways to like figure it out, I think. And I think that's like the most important, when you find ways to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to what we were chatting about at the start, right? You know, pivoting and adjusting, and you know, not just in business, but we've got to do it in life, figure out what it is. And you know, look, it might be maybe you've lost confidence, or maybe it's just a hurdle because of the current economic climate, or you know, you've pivoted into a new area, so you're having to learn more. And it's, you know, I think that comes with anything in life, whether you start a new job, you know, think, oh, this is gonna be good, more money, more people, nice culture, but you know, it's not what we expect, or it doesn't go as planned. But I also mentioned this before, just because things don't go as planned doesn't mean it's actually that bad. Like, I mean, yes, maybe not getting sales means you don't get an income, you know, but at the same time, it also tells you, like, okay, maybe this isn't where you should be putting your focus of time, and it helps you understand maybe someone else can be doing this better, or what's the lessons we can learn from this. But I know you're still going through that, but do you think there is any lessons at this point? Or are you still figuring it out? I think
it's a forever a figuring out process.
Yeah.
I feel like every time I feel like I know, I really don't. So I think it's like learning to like, okay, I'm always gonna be figuring it out. And I think that's okay. I think that's okay within your business or your life if you're still trying to figure it out.
But there will come a point where there's that hindsight moment. You realize, and you're like, and you know, it might be 5 years, it might be 10 years, but that's the beauty of hindsight. Like, we realize it later, and then you can think, oh, if I hadn't done that, then you know, this wouldn't have happened. But you can't see that now.
Yeah, and I think it's just because where I'm at mentally is like right now I'm just forward thinking in terms of the business right now, because it's so new. It's still a baby, so it's like I don't really have the time to be like, what I did was amazing like the last couple months. Right now it's just like boom, boom, boom. What are we doing? How are we doing it? You know, how are we serving our clients? Like, what's the value prop? And right now it's just always thinking forward, as opposed to, I bet you in 5 years, I'll be like, hindsight. You like the ambient?
Yeah, I mean, we'll have the conversation again, and you were like, oh, remember that time? But it is. It's like that. We, you know, it's like when we reflect on, like, I mean, because you've known me before. You know, I left the 9 to 5 before I even went on this journey, and for you, it must be an interesting experience because you've seen me going through the challenge, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to keep doing this work.
The doubt,
and then, oh, but what if I leave? You know, will this work out? Will it not? Now, obviously, I've gone through that process too, but to have it, you know, you from a third person perspective, like, and you can see, there was no problem, and obviously you can see that easier than I can. I can see that now with hindsight and understand it's like, even though there was times where I'm like, oh, what if it fails, or the months where things didn't work out as planned, or I was, you know, overthinking everything. Hey, I'm happy as Larry, and I left the job, and you know, it's all good. But again, I can't know that until you've gone through the process of it. And but even with you, like, you know, no, you haven't done some wild thing and left your job, but you have pivoted and changed and adjusted and done all these different things. And, you know, I remember when you told me, oh, I'm starting the business, and then, you know, it was like a couple of months later when we caught up again, you're like, oh yeah, we signed on like a couple of new clients, and I'm like, dude, this is flying. And like, how quickly it changes, right? But at the same time, here you are saying that, but there's, you know, the challenges of, you know, that failure of I'm not getting the sales, or that's not my strong point, and you're still having to deal with it, right? It's either you give up or you figure out how to go through it, right?
Yeah, and I think that's it. It's just like figuring out and going through it, right? I feel like that's really the only, like, what can you do? Like, I almost feel like you don't even have time to think about it too much, where it's like some things require a little bit more timely, you know, presence, really.
But do you think then, because you're moving forward, that it's not failure? You're not living in failure.
Exactly. And I think that's the whole thing that we were talking about earlier, is like, you know, those moments that are kind of like failures, like, in hindsight, is it really? Because the graph is still moving up.
That's right. It's only in the days that it's lower, but then it's like, you know, the continuous steps.
It really feels like that. So, and I think I'm okay. And doing the business is like, I think that's what I've learned. It's like, maybe I didn't get a lot of sales, but it's like, okay, what did I learn? Like, maybe I have to improve on certain things, or maybe the product isn't doing as good, or
but the business is not failing anyway.
No, because we're still making money.
Exactly.
And it's like, and then like it's figuring out like, okay, a couple clients left because they didn't see the value in us in some of the stuff that we were providing. But then what we did was like, the clients that we did have that loved the service, we actually added more service to theirs, like, and extending it to doing the long form content and editing. And now we're charging them more.
Yep.
So it's like, yeah, we got rid of some, but we're actually making more.
Yeah. And you know, and that you've learned through, you know, the experience of what you're trying to deliver and creating that value journey for the customer.
Yeah.
And being able to make sure that that's a perceived value is what I'm looking for. They understand what that is and what they're getting, and that way, you know, if you can help them understand that, yeah, this $5,000 package is exactly what you need, then they're like, okay, well, $5,000 is what I need to pay, opposed to like them knowing that they can pay $200, but they're not getting everything that they need, only what they want, kind of thing. But sometimes we don't realize what we need versus what we want. Yeah.
And it's like, you know, like getting people to understand like what they need is, that's where the sales part is, right? Like, you know.
Okay. And
I think that's the tricky
because it's
part
not sales anymore. Like,
no,
you're not trying to say buy my product. It's kind of like helping them understand, why do you need this?
Exactly. And that's why, like, sales is such a weird, I get it why people call it sales, but it's really like a bit of a relationship thing too, right? And trust. So it's like, Kev, like, what do we really need? It's like, okay, you do need this, but maybe you don't need this service, because what is it really going to do for your business? And
you got to make sure that they don't think you're just telling them what they want to hear.
Right,
because then you'd lose the trust altogether. But like, I know we've chatted about this. I mean, like Alex Hormozi, right? I mean, he's all for this stuff, like, you know, his book $100 million deals or whatever it is, and he's got some very good perspective on it. But I guess when you're actually in the ranks doing it, it's a different ball game.
It is, yeah. It's always very different than what it is. You know what I mean? It always just, when you're in it.
No, it's fair. And
practice is never the game, right? It's always like,
It's why I always, like, as much as I want to say it, but I also hate saying it at the same time, of like, a lot of the things I say on the pod, like even in these conversations, say, oh, you just got to do this, or you got to keep pushing on. It's so cliche, or it's such a generalized statement, or we make it sound like it's just, oh yeah, just do that. And I don't like it, because, like, you know, whoever's listening on the other side might be like, yeah, but you don't know what I'm going through. You don't have my circumstances. It's like, no, I don't. I've got my own circumstances. I've got my own crap to deal with. But, you know, it's either we only keep going or you don't, right? You don't get the luxury of something in between.
Yeah.
By doing nothing, you're making the decision to do nothing, right? But by moving forward, you're making the decision to move forward. So by not choosing to do anything, it's the same as doing nothing. So, yeah.
There's a lot of good info right there. I had to process it for a bit.
All right. Well, Tim, we're going to wrap it up there. We've had a good chat, and we've been hanging out all day anyway, doing other stuff. But where can people, if people were curious about what you're doing, or want to know more about Kev, like, you know?
Yeah, so I have a personal channel. Well, like, not personal, I guess it's me and my brother just kind of eating food. That stuff is just very fun. It's at Feast Friday on YouTube. And then if you want, you know, any of the business editing stuff, ltmedia.ca. And we also have a couple of YouTube channels that we're working on that you could probably find. You know, just doing a lot of teaching people video stuff, or editing, things like that. So you could check us out on the website as well.
Yeah, and I'll put all this in the show notes and all that jazz, of course. He's well worth following. He's got some cool stuff, and he's a good friend. So yeah,
cool.
All right, appreciate you all. If you do have questions, comments, thoughts about the episode, or anything for Kev, check it down below. Of course, if you are watching on the YouTube, do hit subscribe. If you enjoyed the video, hit a thumbs up, give us a like. Otherwise, if you're here on the audio side, you can, reach out, continue the conversation. Do have SpeakPipe. You can jump over to speakpipe.com/furtheryourlifestyle and leave a memo. It can be a conversation for me, it could be a conversation for Kev, and I can embed it and integrate it into another episode. Otherwise, you have a wonderful day. Cheers.